same discussion we've had with other big companies. How seriously should we take it in the framework of Apple specifically?
Well, I think there'll be some scrutiny, but it's a long, hard road for the prosecutors on a case like this, where the companies are mainly just big, haven't necessarily engaged in any predatory or exclusionary conduct like occurred in Microsoft.
Are you seeing any analogs to the early days of the Microsoft trial?
Well, there's certainly government scrutiny, and they're going to take a look. But Google was scrutinized a few years ago by the Federal Trade Commission, and all 5 commissioners found that there wasn't a case. So it's hard to understand what the difference would be in a couple of years.
In your case, how did you know when it was going to get serious? Were there clues?
Well, I started looking at the documents, the email from Microsoft. Microsoft did some really bad things, and I don't see those kind of things here. So I think it's going to be a tough case to make for the government.
When you say here, you're referring to Apple? What about
Apple, Google, Amazon, big tech in general.
You don't think any of them have anything to really worry about?
Well, yeah, no, they do. I mean, I think they do. Anytime the government is looking at you, it's serious. They have a lot of manpower and resources, and you have to be careful about what you do because you do have large market power. But I just don't see the kind of really hardball tactics that occurred in the Microsoft case.
Are there any parts of the law that perhaps have not been used as much as they might otherwise be, or be brought back perhaps from usage in the 50s or 60s when it comes to antitrust that could be in play here in terms of just overall market power? Well,
so a lot of critics complain that there hasn't been a large, what we call a Section 2 case, which is the monopoly section, since Microsoft. But the fact of the matter is, one of the good things, positive things about the Microsoft case is that we proved that you could apply Section 2 to high tech. I think it got the attention of everybody in high tech, and they've been a lot more careful. Back in the day, Microsoft didn't really have any antitrust lawyers working for them. And now they're all lawyered up. And so I think they're much more careful about what they do. It doesn't mean that they might not have done something that is wrong, but I think it's not going to be the kind of thing that we saw back then.
So you seem dubious as to the government's ability to actually bring a case. I mean, I understand Apple, by the way, most people would put at the bottom of the list of those most susceptible, but even with Alphabet or Facebook, you seem to say it's going to be a very tough road for the government to
I think it will. Under the antitrust laws, being big, market share or dollars isn't enough. In fact, one of the rewards of having a good product is you get a large market share. You're a successful competitor. And it's only illegal if you do something predatory or exclusionary to keep your market share. And I just don't see that kind of thing here. Maybe when they look at the documents, they will reveal something. But, at least on the surface, it doesn't look like it'll be easy.
Provides any kind of roadmap here. I mean, Margaret Vestager has been looking into Google for years, brought numerous charges and actually fines, and found that they do, have some, at least in her view, anti-competitive behavior when it comes to, for instance, prioritizing other apps on the Android software and that sort of thing. So, I mean, is the best case scenario for investors here that they just get more fines?
I'm not sure what the EU does translates to the United States for several reasons. One is the law is different, and I don't think they have the same conduct requirement that we have here. Another difference is the facts. So like in Europe, I believe Android has a much larger market share than it does here, for example. And then by my standards as an American antitrust lawyer, the EU has done some weird things. So like in the Android case, they just ignored the fact that Apple's in the market. That's how they got to the end that Android had a large market share. And as you or anyone else knows, you go into a Verizon store, and you're deciding whether to get an Apple or an Android and the different kinds of Androids. And I'm doubtful that will stand up. Maybe it will. But so the law is different over there.
I wonder, all right, so if we agree that the bar is high, do you believe regulators have one company in mind over another? That one company will come under increased pressure, even if it ends up not being...
Well, they seem to be looking at Google and Amazon these days, right?
I'm just, I wonder what your sense is.
Those seem
we keep adding a new name to the list every week.
Right. So those are the companies I think that they have their sights on at present.
But there are different regulatory agencies. Does it matter if you're being investigated by the FTC versus the DOJ? Because DOJ is looking at Google, but FTC is looking into Facebook.
Right. So one of the peculiar things here, to me at least, is the FTC investigated Google back 6 or 7 years ago. and now it's at the Antitrust Division. So normally, an agency develops expertise in a particular company or product, and they keep investigating there. So it's odd to me that that's shifted over to the Department of Justice. But to answer your question, no, it really doesn't make a difference. It's the same law that applies.
Now, you speak of laws, of course. There is legislation, or the possibility, I would assume, that you could actually get Congress in on this act. Do you have any expectations there in terms of whether that would be something that comes to the fore of them trying to sort of act to curb the power of these companies?
Well, it's a sort of strange brew of people all the way on the left, like Elizabeth Warren, and all the way on the right, like Ted Cruz, who seem to be exercised about the market power. But there'd have to be a very significant change in the antitrust laws, basically eliminating the bad conduct requirement. And I personally I think that would be very difficult to accomplish in this Congress. It would be a major change in our laws.
What do you think about the timing of all of this? Sort of interesting. Do you think they're teeing it up here from the administration as an election issue, potentially?
Well, so one of the unfortunate things about our current president is that he gets involved in law enforcement. And evidently, from what I've read, he hasn't directly communicated to the Antitrust Division or the FTC, say about Google, which he doesn't like, or about Amazon, which he doesn't like. But I think it leaves a bad appearance because he talks about them, and the heads of the FTC and the DOJ can read the papers like I can, so they know what he wants to do. And I just think it's very unfortunate. It's law enforcement. Antitrust is law enforcement, like criminal law enforcement.
We have this same discussion about the Fed. I wonder if you think his tweets or his public comments have an impact on their psyche, even at the margin.
Well, just speaking as a human being, and your boss says something, you pay attention to it, right? I mean, it may not be the thing that makes you make your decision, but it's certainly in the back of your mind at the very least.